All right, so today we're diving into a really fascinating and honestly pretty mind-bending idea. It's called the dark plasma hypothesis, and it comes from an independent researcher named Jay Alfred. The core idea? We might not be alone on Earth. Not because of visitors from space, but because we're sharing the planet with a form of life that's completely invisible.
And that's really the central question, isn't it? The one at the heart of Jay Alfred's entire idea. For generations, we've seen these strange things in the sky, and we've always looked up, out to the stars for an answer. But what if we've been looking in the wrong direction? What if the answer is right here, all around us, just hidden from view?
Okay, so before we can even get into the weeds of this hypothesis, we have to take a step back and question something really fundamental. Our whole definition of what life even is. Are we sure it has to be based on carbon and water?
You know, back in school, they teach you about solids, liquids, and gases. But the universe's absolute favorite state of matter is actually plasma. I mean, over 99% of the visible stuff out there, stars, nebulae, even lightning, it's all plasma. It's not some weird exotic thing. It's the most common building material in the cosmos. And that's our first clue.
Now, what's really wild about this quote is who said it. This isn't some fringe thinker. This is David Bohm, a giant in theoretical physics who actually worked with Albert Einstein. He was noticing that electrons in plasma didn't just act like random particles. They started behaving as a collective, an organized whole. It was almost like they were alive. So this idea, it's been bubbling under the surface of physics for a long, long time.
So, okay, a famous physicist had a hunch. That's cool. But how do you get from a gut feeling to something you can actually test? Well, this is where we move out of the abstract and into the lab, and even into computer simulations.
In 2003, two researchers, Lazzanannuo and Sendeloviciu, did something pretty amazing. They zapped some argon gas and created these little plasma spheres. And what happened was kind of mind-blowing. These spheres just organized themselves. They formed their own protective boundaries, a lot like the membrane of a biological cell. They could even sustain themselves, suggesting a kind of primitive metabolism. It's wild to think these might have been the very first cells on a young, hot Earth.
And it didn't stop there. Just 4 years later, a team led by V.N. Titobish found the other half of the puzzle. Their computer models showed that tiny dust particles swirling inside a plasma could twist themselves into helix shapes, just like DNA. And these plasma helices could copy themselves, store information, and even evolve. So now you've got things that act like cells and things that act like DNA. The basic toolkit for life seems to be there.
So this all sounds pretty promising, right? You've got plasma cells, you've got plasma DNA. So where are all the plasma creatures? Why aren't we swimming in them? Well, it turns out there's a huge, huge problem with the kind of plasma that we're used to.
The thing is, the electrical force is just ridiculously strong. It's trillions upon trillions of times stronger than gravity. And for ordinary plasma, that immense power makes it incredibly chaotic and violent. Any complex structures that try to form are basically ripped apart instantly. It's just too hostile of an environment for complex life to get a foothold and evolve.
And this is where Jay Alfred's core proposal comes into play. He asks, what if there's another kind of plasma, one made from a special type of dark matter? In this hypothetical dark plasma, the electrical force would be way, way weaker. This would create a calm, stable environment, a perfect cosmic nursery where complex, information-rich structures could form, survive, and evolve over billions of years.
Okay, so let's say this stuff exists, this stable, life-friendly dark plasma. Where is it? The answer, according to this hypothesis, is going to bend your brain a little. It's not out there in some distant galaxy. It's right here.
Alfred suggests that our planet isn't just one world, it's two. There's the rocky Earth we know, and then, gravitationally tied to it, is a much larger, totally invisible sphere of dark plasma, a dark Earth. It's not in another dimension, it's right here, occupying the same space, spinning along with us. It's an entire parallel biosphere, a vast plasma ocean where this exotic life could thrive.
And what would life in this invisible ocean be like? Well, you can forget everything you know about biology. These beings would be incredibly low density, almost like ghosts made of energy. They could change their shape, their size, their density, all at will. They wouldn't walk or swim, they'd float, or ride along the Earth's magnetic field lines like a cosmic subway. Think less like animals and more like giant, intelligent, single-celled amoebae.
Okay,
This is a really cool sci-fi concept, right? An invisible world, plasma life forms. But so what? How does any of this connect to something, well, real? Something we can actually observe. This is where the hypothesis tries to explain one of the most persistent mysteries of our time.
This is the key question, right? If they're totally invisible, living in their own dark matter realm, how on Earth could we ever see them? It's a paradox, but according to the theory, there's a bridge, a way for their world to temporarily interact with ours.
Alfred calls this bridge the dark ionization process. The idea is actually pretty clever. The dark plasma life form itself never becomes visible. Instead, when it wants to, it can basically punch our reality. By increasing its own density and slamming into our air molecules, it knocks the electrons off our atoms, creating a glowing shell of ordinary plasma around itself that we can see.
So it's basically a three-step move. First, the creature squeezes itself down, becoming more solid. Second, that increased density means it starts bumping into our air molecules way more often. And third, those collisions strip electrons and create a temporary visible shell of light and energy. It's like a footprint in our world.
And this is where, for a lot of people, the theory suddenly clicks. By controlling the density of that visible plasma shell, the life form can change how it interacts with light. If it makes the plasma frequency high, it reflects light and looks like a bright, solid metallic object. If it lowers the frequency, light passes right through, and it just vanishes. And if it matches the frequency of the light around it, it absorbs the light and appears as a silent black shadow. This could explain so many of the bizarre UAP sightings.
So when you put it all together, what you get is not an extraterrestrial hypothesis. Jay Alfred calls it an interterrestrial hypothesis. The idea that these strange phenomena in our skies aren't visitors from another star system. They're the native fauna of dark Earth, momentarily making themselves visible in our world.
Now, before you write all this off as pure fantasy, check this out. Recent data from a huge experiment in Japan, called the Super K, suggests it's plausible that up to 20% of our planet's entire mass could actually be dark matter. The raw material, the physical room for an entire invisible world to be tied to ours, it might actually be there.
Ultimately, that's what the dark plasma hypothesis leaves you with. It forces you to wonder if the universe is just layered, filled with overlapping biospheres that are completely blind to one another. If life this strange can exist right here, under our very noses, then what else is out there? The cosmos could be far more alive than we ever dreamed.